So I think we can start. Ekta?
Yes, Lasya, please go ahead. We can start now.
Okay. So good evening, everyone. This is Lasya from Citizen Matters. And through this webinar, we propose solutions, coping strategies for parents to deal with their children in the pandemic. So it is summer in a different scenario than the one we are right now. Children would have spent it by taking trips, playing with cousins, and attending summer classes. Not just this vacation, children have missed these pleasures for more than a year now. They haven't gone out to play, many have not met their friends, some not even their grandparents. Screens have replaced their games, homes become schools, conversations with friends have been through WhatsApp and Zoom for those privileged enough to be on the right side of the digital divide. So, COVID is hard on children. Challenges faced are different for children from different socio-economic backgrounds. But it has also been a huge challenge for parents. We all know that they're struggling with work from home, domestic responsibilities. So, parents face the mammoth task of keeping the kids engaged, motivated, and stress free. At such a time, it is important for us to discuss coping strategies and learn from each other's experiences as well as from the experts who work with children on various roles. And so comes the webinar on this subject with our panelists who will provide diverse perspectives. I welcome Kavita, Jayanti, Aarti, Dr. Ravi Kumar sir, Andrew sir, and Devi Mani ma'am. We look forward for your inputs. So Kavita, I'm going to Kavita is a single parent of a teenager from Tondiarpet. She shuffles between two jobs as a domestic worker and tailor. And Dr. Ravi Kumar, he is a senior consultant and pediatric intensivist at Dr. Rela Institute and Medical Center, Krompet. He is also a gold medalist at the undergraduate and postgraduate levels. Devi Mani is a health tech entrepreneur who is a founder of SKOC. SKOC focuses on children's health and well-being. Team SKOC work with physical well-being, emotional, cognitive, and social well-being of children. They also work with children with behavior issues and children with special needs. And we also have Aarti C. Rajaratnam. She's a psychologist and author. She has set up schools for first generation learners and served on the Juvenile Justice Board, working for the integration of children in conflict with the law. And we also have Professor Andrew Seisuraj. He's an assistant professor in the Department of Social Work, Loyola College, Chennai. He's worked extensively with children through UNICEF, Child Rights Watch, Jiva Jyoti, and many other social forums. We also have another parent, Jayanti Jayaraman. She's a human resource professional turned teacher of entrepreneurship to students of class 11 and 12 at Sri Kumaran's Children's Home. She is an alumni of Symbiosis Institute of Business Management, Pune. Her hobbies include reading and doodling. So let's start this with parents. Let's understand the basics, the nitty-gritty of the issue. I'm going to start with Kavita. Kavita ka? So Kavita is a
Hello, madam.
parent. Okay. So I'm going to switch between Tamil and English for this. So Kavita ka, நீங்க நம்ம பேசிட்டு இருந்தோம் இல்லையா? You were telling me உங்க உங்க பையன் வந்து 11th கிளாஸ் படிக்கிறாரு இல்லையா?
ஆமா மேடம்.
ஸோ அவரு வந்து இந்த லாக்டவுன் பீரியட்ல என்னென்ன என்னென்ன மாற்றம் இருக்கு அவர்கிட்ட? ஃபர்கிவ் மீ, மை தமிழ் இஸ் பேட் பட் ஸ்டில் ஐ வில் ட்ரை. ஸோ அவங்க என்னென்ன மாற்றம் நீங்க நோட்டீஸ் பண்ணிட்டு இருக்கீங்க இந்த லாக்டவுன் பீரியட்ல உங்க பையன்ல?
ஒரு வருஷமா ஸ்கூல் சரியா போக முடியல. முன்னாடி ஸ்கூலுக்கு போறப்ப டைமே கிடைக்காது. ஸ்கூலுக்கு போக, டியூஷனுக்கு போக அவன் மைண்ட் ரிலாக்ஸா இருக்கும். இப்போ வந்து இந்த 2 மாசமா லாக்டவுன் போட்டாங்க. அதுக்கு முன்னாடி 10th எக்ஸாம் கூட வைக்கவே இல்லை. அவன் நல்லா படிப்பான், நல்லா படிச்சு மார்க் வாங்கி ஃபர்ஸ்ட் குரூப் சேரணும், டாக்டர் ஆகணும்னுதான் அவனோட ஆசை. ஆனா இப்ப வந்து அவன் கேக்குற குரூப் அவங்க தரல. அவங்க குடுக்குற குரூப் தான் எடுக்கணும்னு சொல்லி சொல்றாங்க. அதனால கொஞ்சம் மைண்ட் டிஸ்டர்ப் ஆயிருந்தான்.
இருப்பாரா அவரு?
ஆமா, வீட்லயே தான் இருப்பான். வெளிய எங்கேயும் மாட்டான். ஃப்ரெண்டுங்க வீடு எங்கேயுமே போக மாட்டான். அந்த லாக்டவுன்ல எங்கேயுமே அனுப்ப மாட்டேன் நானு.
ஓகே. ஸோ வீட்லயே இருக்கும்போது அவர் என்னென்ன பண்ணிட்டு இருக்காரு? ஒரு எவ்ரி டே என்ன பண்றாரு?
வீட்லயே இருக்கிறப்போ செல்லு நோண்டுறது, டிவி பாக்குறது, இத பத்தி தான் இதுதான் 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 இருந்துச்சு. அப்புறமா இந்த ஸ்கூல் லைஃபே மறந்துடுற மாதிரி ஒரு ஃபீலிங்கு. அடுத்து நம்ம என்ன பண்ண போறோம்? அடுத்து நமக்கு இந்த குரூப் எப்படி இருக்கும்? அப்படின்ற ஒரு பயம். அப்புறமா இந்த நியூஸ்லாம் பார்த்தா, அவங்க அப்படி இருக்கிறாங்க, அப்படி கொரோனானால பாதிக்கப்பட்டிருக்கிறாங்க, இவங்க இப்படி இருக்கிறாங்கன்னு சொல்லி ஒரு எண்ணம். அப்புறமா இதெல்லாம் ஷேர் பண்ண கூட வீட்ல யாரும் அவனுக்கு ஈக்குவலா யாரும் இல்ல. அத ஷேர் பண்ண கூட முடியாம அவன் மன அழுத்தத்தினால இருக்கிறான். அப்புறமா இந்த கொரோனானால எங்களுக்கு வருமானம் எதுவும் இல்ல. நம்ம வீட்டு சூழ்நிலையும் இந்த மாரி இருக்கு. நம்மனால எதுவும் நமக்கு அம்மாக்கு உதவி பண்ண முடியல. அப்படின்னு சொல்லி டிஸ்டர்ப் ஆகுறான். பொழுதுபோக்குன்னு பார்த்தா செல்லு நோண்டுறது இதுதான் கன்டினியூஸா நடந்துட்டே இருக்கு.
ஸோ
நான் செய்யாதடா அப்படின்னு சொன்னா கூட அடுத்து நான் என்ன பண்றது அப்படின்ட்டு என்கிட்டயே கேட்பான்.
Okay, Akka. So I'll summarize what she has told for the English speaker. So she was telling that her child, his name is Vignesh. Vignesh is in class 11. He has been spending the lockdown at home. He doesn't know what to do. He's most of the time he's on the phone because she doesn't allow him outside due to the pandemic. When she asks him not to use the phone, he says, what else can I do? For which she has no answer. And he also feels bad that due to the lockdown, she's the only earning member in the family, the mother. So her earnings are not so great, and that also worries him. He doesn't speak about it, but she knows that worries him. And he doesn't know what to do also. So like we have Kavita, Kavita's experiences tell us that the challenges are different for different children. For Vignesh, it's different. He wants to also contribute to the family, but he doesn't know how to do it, and it's not the right age also. Okay, so okay, Akka, நான் திருப்பி உங்களுக்கு next question கேட்கிறேன். Now we move on to Jayanti to understand the challenges faced by her kids. நீங்க வீடியோ ஆடியோ மியூட் பண்ணிக்கோங்க அக்கா. So Jayanti, you are a mother of a teen and a preteen. How have you been engaging them? What's your experience been?
Okay. First of all, thanks for the wonderful introduction, Lasha, and a very good evening to the eminent panel. Happy to be with the spectators. So when Lasha gave me a quick briefing as to, cover my 11-year-old daughter, I have a 14-year-old and 11-year-old, the preteen group, which we famously call as, I would like to split my challenges into a pie, and within that pie, 4 quarters. And no particular order, no particular weightage, parents and everyone. The first challenge, exactly a year and 2 months back, fag end of the academic year, students were about to finish their exams and kickstart their vacation. But with the pandemic making inroads into our country, schools were closed and exams were called off. So the summer vacation started on a very, very high note for my daughter, which meant extended playtime, more time with her friends, more time to meet grandparents and cousins. But within 2 weeks, the lockdown was announced, which meant stay indoors, can't meet friends, can't go outside, can't visit parents and cousins, and many more can'ts started getting added to that. So these highs minus the lows equated to a term and a phrase which we've been hearing like one mantra or a chant through this 1 year: boredom. I am very bored. I don't know what to do. This is so unfair. And my daughter started using slightly heavier phrases like, this is so frustrating, which we've never heard her, use earlier. So the first challenge, boredom. The second challenge, I would like to make a very honest confession here. It was 50 to 60% self-created and contributed by me and my husband. Until lockdown, we did not have Wi-Fi at home. Our dependency on internet was really, really low. 2 simple smartphones, and children hardly used internet. Most of the work was done at school, and back home, very less dependency on internet. But this constant chanting of boredom made me and my husband very magnanimous, and we thought, why don't we subscribe to a few OTT platforms? And we made a pact. Only 3 months, okay? Only 3 months, and after that, everything will get back to normal. and we will unsubscribe to, Hotstar, Netflix, Amazon, whatever we subscribe to. But parents till date, 28th May 2021, we haven't unsubscribed. And in fact, we've added a Fire Stick to our TV as well. So exponentially increased digital screen time. And within 2 months, online classes started, their hobby classes started online. Yes, big kudos to all the schools and the hobby teachers who filled this learning gap, especially for students who had those infrastructural facilities at home to continue everything online. So online classes, hobby classes, and the screen time which we created for them, we felt there was so much time in front of the screen, different varying sizes of the screen, small, medium to large, and we knew that it was really impacting my child's eyesight, mental faculty, her posture, weight gain, and so many other related issues. So that is the second quarter of my pie. The third quarter of my pie, the challenge is a natural outcome of boredom and increased digital exposure, immense snacking. So earlier our snack time was just restricted to, once a day after school hours and little more leniency towards the weekend. But now it was through the day in between meals. And again here, because of our restricted visit to the stores and shops, me and my husband started storing and hoarding a lot of snacks at home, which meant instant access to snacks through the day, including ourselves, not just the children, and which led to a lot of binge eating. The final quarter of my pie, it may sound slightly different from the other three, but it definitely has its interlinkages. Somewhere down the line, it hit me very hard that whether my daughter was all the time just focusing about herself, her day, how she wants to spend her time, how we have to keep her occupied, engaged. So the entire onus shifted to us as parents to keep them occupied, engaged through the day. We thought we inculcated the value of being empathetic and sensitive towards the environment, but somewhere we felt it stayed at the theoretical level and didn't become reality. And of course, I'm not saying I'm expecting an 11-year-old to be absolutely selfless, empathetic and be concerned about the entire environment, but yes, we expected definitely a small degree. So to sum up, the 4 challenges: boredom, digital exposure, eating habits, and finally being very inward and self-focused. Thank you.
Okay, so that makes you, yeah, now we have to learn. I would like first we through Kavita's experience is completely different from yours. And now there is another side. But before we get into that, I would request all the spectators, if you have any questions, you can post it on the chat box. We will take it up later. You can also post the questions on Facebook. We are live on Facebook. So now I would like Devi Mani ma'am to answer this question. Uh, what are the needs of special children? Like, are the challenges different for the children with special needs? Devi?
Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Great. So again, thank you very much for having me here. And since we are in the well-being space, I think I'm going to reach out to Jayanti and make her my poster parent, because that's exactly the area that we work in, which is physical well-being, where we see, India, I think, has got about between 16 to 17 million overweight and obese children, and that's only increasing. We're seeing more diabetes, hypertension, and issues that are happening, which kind of go into a bit of a spin because it automatically affects their emotional well-being as well. Children are very aware that they're overweight. They don't like it. Not to mention the amount of social pressure they feel. Very often we all kind of attribute pressure to what parents are telling them to not eat more, or perhaps their friends. But children are independent and they have their own mind now. They see the amount of media they consume also kind of makes them realize that they're perhaps of not the size that is acceptable socially. And then of course there's the whole cognitive part, right, which I'm sure Jayanti will see in a while. But focus will reduce with that kind of intake of media through the digital medium. But what else do you do? I think that's a very fair question to ask, saying what else do you do? And being the mother of an older teen, my daughter is 16 and a half. I can tell you that excepting for the weight part, because she works out by herself and that's just something that she likes to do, everything else applies here as well. We've had the same issues, and she's somebody who went through the whole 10th standard turmoil this year. But coming back to needs, I think if you were to say, are the needs very specifically different, Lasya? I would say to a certain extent, yes, for special needs children, because for them, it goes across, first, number one is that they have medical needs, right? A child who does not have any special needs or who is neurotypical will not have a medical need at all times. We of course need to watch out at all times as parents, but specific medical needs might not be there. Learning disability is something which is also a little different, right? Most special needs children have a learning need as well, which makes it a lot more difficult, especially on any given day. Special learning needs are difficult in India because we're just not geared up to handle them physically or medically. Medically, perhaps we are, but from a learning perspective, we're not. In the pandemic, I think the number of children for us, we focus a lot on ADHD children. We've had our hands full. We've had our hands full where we've seen everything from parents deciding to change the medication by themselves, unilaterally saying, you know what, the children don't need medication because there is no distraction because they're all at home. And going on to the children not having therapy, not having their regular counseling sessions. We've had a lot of issues. So, what we're doing now is actually reaching out to people in corporates, etc., saying, you know what, you have to focus on children specifically. Employees, yes, but children very, very specifically. I can tell you that we have more leads coming into us for obesity and emotional counseling than we've ever had before. I mean, there are times when we kind of, draw a line and we call back parents and say, give us a little bit of breather. We'll come back to you in a week or two. One of the things that we saw has made a huge difference, and this is something we started since September of last year, is that we started running these sessions purely for a social well-being connect situation, where we just said we want to get a cohort of 10 to 12 children across different age groups. Of course, the cohort becomes smaller as the age increases, to just come and start making friends online. We unfortunately are limited by the medium through which we're reaching out to children, because there is nothing else I can do. We can't get them downstairs to play, but we've been trying to mimic playtime as much as we can. And I must tell you that it's been really good, especially for children who are in the, in the late adolescent, right? Your older teens who are 15, 16, 17, for whom we don't realize this as parents, but for them, their social structure is the most important thing. We're not. They've already started breaking away from us. They're getting more independent as they're 14 and 15, and they need that social structure. So we're seeing that that's really helping as they make new friends. But for children with special needs, I would say, apart from all of this, we have to give them all of this. And then there's the extra medical need, as well as the special learning work that needs to be done for them. If you ask me, the few special needs children that we've been working with, a few children who are on the spectrum, we've actually seen that their isolation, frustration has kind of increased a lot more. We're seeing them, we're seeing behavioral issues become a lot more serious. Perhaps also, progress into becoming medical issues, where we see some situations where we see where a child never had any, epileptic episodes or seizures, now having them, anger issues are definitely increasing more because they're all within a bunch of walls. So yes, definitely more difficult for children with special needs. I mean, it's bad enough for children who are neurotypical, but for children with special needs, it's actually much worse.
Okay, thank you for the insight. I mean, this is something we don't really know about it, because children with special needs, they go through a lot and there are not many resources. We have also been working on a few articles where the resources are very less, and
Yeah.
parents have been struggling too. So I would like this question. I would like Andrew sir to answer this question. Like when Kavita was speaking, she said, like when her son asked her, what else can I do if not use the mobile? She didn't know how to answer that. So Andrew sir, do you have what are the problems faced by children from the lower economic groups? So classes, and what do you think the parents should do?
Okay. Thank you for this forum platform for sharing my insights and my thoughts. And thank you for the panelists for giving me great insights. Thank you, everyone. Yes, whenever there is a pandemic, whenever there's a disaster, the lower economic people are the ones who are most hit. And this COVID-19 pandemic is not something different from the others. because schools, as Kavita Ka was telling and Jayanti ma'am was telling, schools were shut, and that's the only place, or majority of the time they were spent there, and that is shut off, that is stopped for them. It's almost a year that they were not accessing schools, and school becoming a pleasure now. No, you become privileged now. You cannot even think of a school now, and that's the only space for learning for children from lower economic. Other schools, private schools, government schools, the corporation schools are totally dependent and reliant on the Kalvi Kachi, the television education. Okay. It's one side, one way of learning. There's no interactive learning happening in Kalvi television. And when it comes to 10, 11, and 12 standard children, it's again more different, because it's all about scoring marks in these classes, and with no regular coaching, regular teaching happening. It is very difficult. Okay, internet is very feeble. I'm switching off the camera so that it helps me to save the data. Okay.
Sure, sir. Yes.
So it's very important, but with the with the online classes, with not regular classes, now already for NEET, the government school and the corporation school children are very difficult to finding difficult to find a place. But now with this remote learning and interrupted learning, how far they'll be able to make it this year, it's still going to be a question. And as Kavita said, we had interaction with many telling. Now they forgot to spell names, spell their names. They are finding difficult because they are not writing for the last 1 year and 1 year and 2 months. So they were not writing. So many of the, and in home, there is no practice of offering children to read a book, extra reading. Okay. Yes, in other families, in privileged families, we have at least parents read and they also share books. Whereas here, the scope is very limited. And Jayanti ma'am was speaking about extra snacks. Our children, when we were having discussion with the children on the problems they are facing, the children were saying the midday meals in the school, we used to have midday meals, and my mother gives me snacks, though the money that is saved from the midday meals is used for snacks. But now, since our mother's lost job, thinking of 3 square meals is a problem. And where can we think about snacks? And when I stay the entire day at home, I need more snacks. But finding 3 square meals is a big difficult. And the play space, the street is their drawing room. The street is their drawing room. They live in a 10 into 10 space. When you go to the places like Tandiarpet, Korukapet, Vyasarpadi, you can find them. Okay, the entire house, including the kitchen, bathroom, hall, everything together is only 10 into 10. That's the size of the room. And they sit in the streets, even to study sometime. Okay, so what happens? There is, and asking them for physical distancing, or when there is infections, when they have to isolate, it's out of question. It's completely out of question. And this led also to family discord. There is a lot of problems within, because 24 hours they are in the home. At least when the children go to school, the parent or the mother had some free time in between to do other regular course, but now it is not. So 24 hours children are at home, husband is at home. So that's because of that, there are a lot of family discord, and children are witnessing that, and children also bear the burnt of it. Okay. And when we say that, it is also like, for example, now we also kill phones, though there are no exclusive phones, because cybersecurity experts say sharing the adult phone with the children is not right, because when the phones are very smart, the phones start automatically understanding your age. So it will send you automatically the age related content. So if I'm going to give my adult phone, the one phone used by the adult to the children, the advertisement, the pop-ups will be more adult centric. Okay, so sharing, but there's no choice in these houses. They have to use the same mobile phone for online classes, for receiving notes from their class teachers, for sending the assignments. They have to use the same phone. Okay, the online safety is still another problem. And uh, children with special needs, already Devi ma'am was speaking, especially in these houses where it is only small houses, living with children with special needs, their aggressiveness sometimes. Okay, when the schools were happening, at least the mid of the day, the children will be in the daycare, but it would be 24 hours, 24/7. Problem, but what parents can do? Of course, it's still a big question, because they themselves are struggling to make their ends meet. Today we have child labor problem already. Okay, lots and lots of children, because there is no continuity in the school. As the son of Kavita, what can I do? Because I'm at home, I'm not doing anything. So what should I do? I'll help my mother because my father lost job. I'll help my mother. Okay, that is an instant. We did a rapid survey last September, and one instant is that one girl child was dressed as a boy, and she was sent to sell tea, because sending a girl on the streets to sell tea is not safe. So she was made to dress like a boy, and she went out to sell tea. Child marriage, child line 1098 says there are more calls now on child marriage. The district child protection officers and the district child marriage prohibition officers, their statistics are increasing. The child is happening in a large scale. Child trafficking because of bonded labor. All these are on the rise. What parents can do, I'm out of answer, but few things that what they can do is fixing schedules. Like for example, this time, because TV is the only entertainment they have, but all through the day, what will run, who shares which one, because there are five people: father, mother, 2 or 3 children, the grandmother, grandfather. Okay, so it's very hard to really give an answer for this. But what they can do is, yes, we can use this positively, to spend time listening to parents, listening instead of listening to TV, listening to children, listening to tata party, the grandparents. Okay, the one which we missed a lot. Now at least we have time to do that. Okay, so and spending quality time. I think this is the only answer I can give them, but I don't know how it is still going to be a possible answer. Thank you,
Yes.
Lasha. I think I
Yes,
made
sir.
sense.
You definitely did. And we in the next round we have to discuss more about the role of community in this aspect. But before that, I
Yes.
would ask Aarti ma'am to answer this question, because it's everywhere. It's gloomy everywhere. The news around us is making an impact on everybody, even kids. What are some signs to look out for, like anxiety or depression among kids, and how do you reassure them?
So thank you for the opportunity. And again, before we say look out for signs in the kids, I'd say look for signs in the adults, because children tend to model many of the things that are happening at home. So before we start looking at children, I would say look at what is the environment you're creating in your own home. In terms of people like Kavita, who shared a very genuine story, uh, the situation may be very different. But in most of our homes, especially for people who've been able to come onto Zoom or onto Facebook right now, I'm sure the situation is very different. Considering this, what are the signs that I need to look for? First, always, if there is a change, a sudden change in the physiological processes, that's the first thing I would look for, which is there a sleep disturbance? Are there changes in toilet habits? Okay, sudden bedwetting, soiling the self, these kind of things, change in eating habits. The physiological aspect is always the first thing that parents need to look out for, because that will always give you a sign that something is not okay, something is off. And then you may need to see if it is something physical that you need to look at or something mental, emotional, right? The second area that I would look for is where children are actually acting out. You have like sudden temper tantrums, meltdowns, change in energy levels, those kind of things. The third set of symptoms that I would look for, third set of signs that I would look for, is in the relationships that the child has, avoiding people, clinging to people. So any change in the relational aspect that you have would be something that I would look at. And the fourth area is when you see new behaviors that the child has picked up, which are not typical. Why I'm asking you to do this instead of saying, look at depression, look at this, look at that, is because if I give you signs like this, people will start diagnosing. And now everybody is an expert, everybody is a life coach, everybody is a positivity mentor. I know all sorts of names that have come up. Come on, we've spent years trying to practice, and I would still not call myself an expert after 2.5 decades of working with children. And then there are people who just have like one episode of COVID and then they become life coaches. So one of the things that I would definitely put out here is like a note of caution. Okay, when you see a change and you realize that you're not able to co-regulate with your child. Okay, many times what the child is acting out is because the adult is not able to regulate. Okay, the parent is highly strung, the parent is extremely anxious, and the child is reacting to that. If you are calm, if you are able to regulate, you are able to work with your child, and then your child still has difficulties, that's when you consider them signs. So if I were to put it under a large umbrella, look for physiological changes, look for relational changes, look for specific emotional changes, instead of putting it under diagnostic criteria, because then I don't want, mental health professionals like me have already been swamped with a lot of work. If I give you four, 5 signs and symptoms that you have to look for, tomorrow I'll have a lot more calls. So I'm going to just stop it there, and I hope that answers the question as well.
Yes, yes, definitely. So next, Dr. Ravi Kumar, this question is for you. Like from all these experiences, one thing is quite evident that children, even adults are binge eating, but children, how do we like binge eating, digital addiction? These are all the issues now. Let's deal with digital addiction. Like children spend a lot of time on screen these days. Like what implications could it have on their health, especially the optical health?
Good evening and thanks for the opportunity. I'm happy to listen more about the physiological and psychological aspects. And I'm going to confine myself to answer about the problems we can create. Yes, first you asked about optical things. It can cause eye tiredness, irritability, and dryness. These are all major problems, and there are studies even before the pandemic. If you a very good study from Singapore, they say that less than 6 years, more than 65% of their children are having myopia or eyesight problem requiring glasses because of the increased screen time which has happened over the years. That's a major thing. Next is going to be your behavior and your problems which you can get. They are getting attention span which is reduced. They get irritability, mood swings, and the next problem is the screen time always go hand in hand with junk eating. So that increases a lot of problem in their nutritional aspects, weight gain, and all the problem which starts setting in from a weight gain. Um, Definitely the concentration when it comes to thinking capacity, already I said, their concentration is reduced. And digital learning is good, but it's not going to solve the problem completely. So interaction is reduced. So it affects even your psychological aspects in many ways. So I
Dr. Ravi Kumar, sorry for like, coming in between. Your voice is not very clear. Can you try maybe switching off your video for better quality?
so I will repeat. I would say first, are you able to hear me well?
Okay, I think it's Doctor. Are you there?
I'm there. Are you able to hear me well?
Yes. Okay, better than before. Yes.
So yes, I was saying about the optical problems or your eye vision problems, which can cause dryness,
Yes.
irritability, fatigability, and also I spoke about the vision problems which are in rise because of more screen time and evidence coming around. Then I talked about the problems which relate to your behavior, like your reduced attention span, irritability, mood swings, which comes with more of watching TV. Then I talked about the nutritional aspect like binge eating and weight gain, which can happen because of your more screen time. And finally, I talk about the psychological aspect because that's a concern which most of us have put it across because and finally about education, and I would say concentration is reduced when you are more on screen, and this may affect your problem.
Okay, doctor. Is there anything you wanted to add? Are you okay? So we have finished the first round of questions. Uh, for the audience, if you have any questions, please do ask. We can take a few questions now. Otherwise, we can ask the questions towards the end of the session. Most of your queries will be like I'm sure they would have been answered throughout the session now. So there's one question from a reader, Kavita Jaykumar. Let's take this question. I don't like it, who anyone can from the panel can take this question, but I think this question is for Aarti. I'm not very sure. So this says this new normal has created a severe destruction in my child's routine, which is becoming my prime concern now. I can understand it's a way of showing their distress. Should I keep convincing myself that it's going to be okay, or should I act to put them on track?
See, let's not call it new normal, okay? This is a pandemic. Okay, don't add the word normal along with it. These are uncertain times and they're very stressful for everybody. Having said this, teenagers are already going through several changes. We call it the second brain revolution. So for them, the emotional part of the brain is going to be working differently than an adult. Now, for say, let's say me and Devi and Jayanti and Andrew and Ravi Kumar and all, my thing is our brain works, hopefully, when we feel a lot of emotion, we are able to somehow regulate it and take it to the thinking part of the brain and then move towards solutions. For a teenager, that is very, very difficult. So how do you change this? Now, it would go into the second question last year supposed to ask me, but I'll just answer it with that. Now, there are 4 hours that I would give every parent, irrespective of the age group that you're working with, whether it's a special needs child or otherwise. Now, number 1 is routine. Now, just because your routine before the lockdown last year was different, it doesn't mean it can't change. For a whole year and 2 months, your routine has had to have a change. But if you didn't change and you were clinging on to what you did in March 2020, believe me, that's where your parenting has failed. Okay. Now, when you say new normal, it means it also has new routines. You are going to be indoors more often. You are going to have to interact with each other more often. You are going to have to, share space much more. And you'll have to, in a year and 2 months, if you haven't figured it out, I think it's a good time to start now because I don't think the pandemic is going away very soon. Okay, number 1. So when I say routine, the first and the most important when it's a teenager and when it's a young child, please make sure sleep is regular. Because without making sleep habits regularized, there's no point in trying to change anything else in the child's life. And when I say regularized sleep habits, please find out if your child is an owl or a lark. When I say owl, these are children who stay up late in the night and like to sleep late into the day. Okay, larks are people like me who wake up early in the morning and you go to sleep very early. And we all have, there will be 2 types of people. And it doesn't mean that just because you're an owl, the child will be a lark and so on. You have to find out what your child really resonates with. Set the sleep habits, make sure that they go to bed at the same time and wake up at the same time. Just because you've got your OTT platforms and you've got them all the games and everything to keep them occupied, it doesn't mean that you don't sit down and have a talk with them about what they can and how they can use it. This is the first, the routine. The second is that they have to learn regulation. Our education system has failed our children in the single aspect that we have focused so much on external accolades, we've forgotten to teach children how to go inwards and reflect. Okay, so for this, I've always taught parents something called the Bedtime Debrief. If you want, it's all over on my YouTube channel and everything, you can have a look at it. It's basically how you sit down and help children to reflect. Even children with special needs are able to understand this and they're able to participate beautifully. Even children on the autism spectrum understand debriefing very well. So I would work on reflection. The third is regulation, helping children understand that all emotions, all states, all kinds of thoughts are extremely normal. And I just need to know how to deal with them and how to move on to something better. Sometimes I may need to fix it. Sometimes I may need to endure it. These are 2 states that the children need to learn. And this is something that I can teach only by modeling. You don't have to go out always and fix the child. Sometimes if you're modeling well, children also learn through that modeling very beautifully. Young children, especially when Devi mentioned beautifully that her daughter loves exercise, that's because somewhere in the home environment, there is a talk of wellness. And the child has picked it up very subconsciously that wellness is something important and exercise is an important part of it. So what kind of habits am I bringing into the conversations and into the actions in my home will be the third aspect. And the fourth is extremely important, which is relationships. Okay. Now, if you see a lot of parenting magazines that come out of Chennai and all, they'll have like 4 tips to make your child a superstar, 3 tips to fix your child. What is this? A problem to be fixed? It's a relationship to be nurtured. Parenting is a relationship. So stop looking for tips and start building the relationship. And building a relationship, you need to start with connection, move towards communication. And 3, realize that there will be conflict in every relationship and you need to sit down and work together. I hope that answers the question.
Yes. Yeah, that actually answers. Since we are actually moving towards the solutions front, I want Jayanti to come in here. So you mentioned about the challenges you face, Jayanti. So can you also talk about the solutions? Like what has your strategy been?
Okay. Pretty strong term strategies. Again, here at the outset, I would like to make it very clear that there is no magic pill to completely, eradicate all these challenges. I have reduced it to a small extent over a period of time. So quick 6 to 7 workables that worked for us. How you can deploy it at your place. I'm sure you know how to do the tweaking and tuning. The first thing that we did not change was our sleep cycle. So whatever sleep cycle we maintained pre-lockdown, we continued that. Whatever time we used to get up and hit the bed, we continue to maintain that. So in our house, it was waking up by 6:30 and hitting the bed at 9 o'clock, which meant we had a lot of daytime with us to pursue various activities together, and it definitely left us with a fresh and healthy mind and body. That was the first thing. The second thing that we worked on, and it's still work in progress, is converting the term board into board games. We just looked for resources inside the house that we could use and spend time together as a family. And parents here, if you have siblings, please get your siblings together to play games together. It really makes a ton of difference. Initially, yes, there'll be a lot of reluctance, hesitation to play together, squabbles, fights, complaints. But over a period of time, I have seen in my son and daughter a beautiful bonding and relationship that has developed. Be it a game of carom, chess, Scrabble, Monopoly, business, trade, which can go on for hours together. And this is a time I also revisited the games that I used to play as a child. And my 11-year-old daughter, as many of us shared here, that age group really mirrors what the parents do. They really lap up to what we do. So, simple things like name, place, animal things, tic-tac-toe, putting dots in the notebook, joining, boxing it, and putting our initials. Whoever gets a maximum is the winner. These small games I reintroduced, and she loves it. And till date, we keep playing those games. And to pull them out of a little bit of lethargy, inertia which has set in, we converted our small dining table into a table tennis table. So we had rackets at home. So the children started playing with whatever space they had, and that is a challenge they put for themselves. And they brought in their own innovation of playing the table tennis with their palms than the racket. So these are small things which we deployed to bring down the term boredom, the usage of it. The third one, with respect to digital exposure, in addition to the online classes and the hobby classes, which became part and parcel of their day, we sat down with my daughter and explained the ill effects in simple, pure layman terms as to how it can cause so many ill effects on her. And she understood that. And we said, apart from all your online classes and hobby classes, you get a maximum of 1 hour or 1.5 hours in a day for you to spend on other things, be it watching her anime show or learning something on YouTube, or having a Zoom call with her friends. And this substantially brought down the digital time. Yes, there are some days which are absolutely very hard, and parents, I have to tell you that some days all these workables work beautifully, fantastically, and the very next day it can backfire really bad. You just need to accept it with a, we used to accept it with a heavy heart and do some fine tuning and tweaking the next day. The fourth workable is directly related to the challenge that I spoke about, children being very inward focused. So we decided that they need to start participating in household chores, starting from washing their tumblers and plates, helping me out with putting the vessels back in the shelves after washing, putting clothes in the washing machine, keeping it for drying, occasional mopping and sweeping. Apart from the fancy cooking, some life skills with, rolling out chapatis, making dosas. And here, my children started pleasantly surprising me, saying, Amma, you sit down today, we'll make breakfast for you. So this definitely changed their idea of just being bothered about themselves and looking around as to what's happening. Added to this, grandparents. There was a huge vacuum in the lives of the grandparents with this pandemic. We are a nuclear family with grandparents in the same city, but the visits were curtailed a lot. So the grandparents used to call up and talk to the children, but we realized this was happening only one sided. Every time only the grandparent or the grandparents would call and talk, my daughter would speak to them very nicely, but the reciprocation was not happening. So I would call it, we imposed it as a rule that you have to pick up the phone once in 2 days and talk to your grandparents. And initially, yes, we kept telling them you need to do it. Now it's kind of become a habit, and there is a lot of happiness and stories that is being shared from the two ends. The next workable is, please encourage your children to pursue their hobbies. Whatever hobbies they've been pursuing since they're already a part of it. So the time that they spend in practicing for that hobby, be it performing arts, drawing, or any other hobby, yes, sports is at a different level. Please allow them to, pursue it. And in this pandemic, my daughter picked up, few additional hobbies. She knew knitting, so she progressed into crochet. And yes, this involved a little bit of digital time, but it was around that 1 hour that was given to her, she had to utilize it. Again, here, if siblings have common interests, they can sit together and work as a team and do things together. Here, my son and daughter had a common interest with drawing, so they used to sit and draw their anime characters. One used to do the drawing, one used to the coloring, and they came up with some impressive artwork at the end of it. And the last, but not the least, which I'd like to, really stress upon, is having a routine. When I say routine, I'm not saying a regimented structure from morning 6 o'clock to night 9 o'clock like a timetable. No, there are some must-do activities during during that particular time, which has to be finished, be it sleep, eating, homework, hobby classes, etc. But the rest of the time, the unstructured time, if I may call it, the onus gradually shifted to my daughter to put what she wants to do in that time. So that really helped a lot, and children do love structure around their day. And I think if we help them a little bit in giving that structure, it really worked well in my case. A small success that I would like to share here: a couple of days before the academic year started for my children, the online classes started, and 2 days before that, my son and daughter wanted me to sit with them, and their online class timetable came that, Amma, can we draw a routine, a schedule around this? So with minimal inputs from me, in a simple rule sheet, day wise, they have put a routine. And I know it's just been a couple of days, but they're ardently looking at it, and I hope it becomes part of their system. So parents and everyone, so these are the simple 6 to 7 solutions that we worked on. And I hope you can take a cue or two from here. And I'm gaining a lot of inputs from others as well. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I think that's something positive I've been listening to. So now I would my next question is to Devi Mani ma'am. So you've discussed the challenges faced by children with special needs. So what do you think are the workables for those children, ma'am?
So, I'm going to kind of broaden your question, Lasha, because it's not just children with special needs. I think we're seeing children who are, neurotypical as well, having a lot of needs. So I'm going to broaden the whole thing. The first thing is I'm going to pick from where Aarti left off, saying that, if you want your child to have a routine, check back to see as parents if you have a routine. Remember that the pandemic, being extraordinary, has also affected us as adults. We are feeling very lost, even for someone who's deeply introverted as I am. I'm getting quite annoyed with the same people being around. I'm expected to talk more than I need to talk. My 16-year-old wants to have deeply existential conversations with me because, she's done with having conversations with everybody else, right? So, what were you as a teen? these things honestly tire me out, but I have to tell myself as well that, when she comes into my room at 10 p.m. deciding to see if I was a model teen and she has to model me, I have no idea what's behind her head. I just have to, put my stuff aside, sit up in bed because I'm ready to sleep, and say, okay, let's talk about what you want. I think as parents, we have to recognize these are extraordinary times and children therefore have very extraordinary needs. It might not be logical at all. The second thing we need to, at least we tell a lot of our parents and we practice this as well, is to reset your expectations. It's not wrong to have expectations, but reset them. And reset does not mean lower, but realize that at a time when school is online, focus is so difficult. I wish I could share more data with you guys. We keep running surveys and polls, but children, about 270 children joined our polls, and they said that their online screen time has gone up by 570%. That's not funny at all. For children who are changing the way they're communicating, they're just one-way consumption. There is no social stimulus in these children. Trying to say that you still need to go get your A pluses and A's and you've got to do this fabulous thing is difficult for them. Remember that all children have their aims. Anybody, every single child, not a single child we've spoken to has ever said, I don't want to do well. They all want to do incredibly well. They want to be tops. So remember, they already are putting pressure on themselves. They don't need the additional pressure from us. What they do need is to say, you know what, go for it. And let's see where you land. Wherever you land is fabulous. Okay, just go for it now. I think those are things we need to reset and change in ourselves as well. So, set routines, follow routines yourself. One of the things that we always tell parents is if your child is making a routine, you expect your child to make a routine, sit with your child and make that routine, right? You don't want your child to have junk food. That's a very, very good ask. Make sure you don't have any either. And just so that you know, to everybody on this thing, we run a very big obesity program, and our correlation between an overweight mother and an overweight child is higher than 92%. So for every single overweight child that comes, only, for every 100, only 8 mothers are actually in the healthy, weight range themselves. 92 are not. And therefore, remember, like Aarti was saying and Dr. Ravi Kumar was saying, they pick things from us. If we eat unhealthy, they will eat unhealthy because that's acceptable. Again, if you were to look at the emotional part, the regulating part, allow yourself some slack, be kind to yourself as a parent, be very kind to yourself and gentle as a parent, because again, all of these are very trying times. And for all of us as parents, we have fears for our own parents and our loved ones. How many have we lost, or how many have we been scared of losing, almost lost? Remember, these fears pass on to the children as well. Like Kavita said, if Vignesh has heard about financial issues, then he's felt it. He feels it somewhere, and therefore he's reflecting it back to them. These fears are felt by the kids as well, very strongly, and therefore they will not know how to regulate their feelings. It'll come out in a way you perhaps don't expect, right? It'll be a bit of an outburst. So I would say those are things that we need to look at very closely. For children with special needs, one of the things that we see has changed during this time, and it's worrying us, is the lack of building independence. One of the things that happens with children with special needs, is that throughout their therapy time and their well-being handling time, there's a lot of focus on making them independent. There's a lot of focus, and they need this focus on connectedness, right? You want to be independent, you need to be very connected. So for children on the spectrum, perhaps, our ADHD kids, our children, our young adults with perhaps schizophrenia and stuff like that, connectedness is huge, huge. We are seeing that that's dropped a lot. So, one of the things that we tell all of our parents is you might not like it, but for a neurotypical child or a child with special needs, make sure they're having Zoom calls with their friends regularly. Make sure they're talking to their friends. Sometimes it is utter meaningless stuff that's being spoken about, but that is needed. They need to start connecting with their peer cohort, their friends circle, because that is where they actually grow. And we don't realize it. They do, it's great to listen to me, but I'm sure I'm sure my daughter doesn't want to see my face anymore. That's the truth. She'll probably never say it, but I'm sure she's just tired of seeing me every morning, noon, and night. So I kind of insist that she has calls with her friends, with different sets of friends. But like Jayanti, I to set a time that she will speak with them for, and say maybe 45 minutes of a call, and that's it. But definitely once a day, I recommend that she, catches up with people and talks to them. I also find that as different children are doing different things to keep themselves entertained. My daughter tends to pick up something because she came and told me saying, there's this friend of mine, he's trying it with watercolors. So can I try watercolors? So we said, okay. And, she had a sketch pad. So we bought some watercolors in and she's trying it all out. But I think it's a very healthy way. And for children with special needs, this can be a little difficult because, connectedness is not as simple as doing a Zoom call. So that's definitely something that has to be worked on. And finally, physical fitness for children with special needs is a huge importance, even for neurotypical children. So in our program, we tell kids that, you want to put your headphones on and just do spot jog, do it, right? You just want to stretch, and we've had some fabulous success stories where children through the pandemic who crossed 110, 120 kilos have been able to actually lose 15, 20 kilos by sheer determination and being driven. But there, I must tell you, parents were perhaps the biggest complementing factor there. They actually drove the success part of it. So, to recap, one, look at yourselves as parents, be gentle, but also be very clear that you have to follow what you expect your children to follow. Number two, definitely have expectations, but reset them. Reset them so that both you and your child are comfortable with what is expected of the child. Make sure that there are expectations that your child can set from you, because unless you regulate what is expected, it's not going to happen with your child. The third, please ensure that the child has a lot of connectedness. Special children as well as neurotypical kids, make sure that they're talking to their friends, like Jayanti said, grandparents, but outside of the circle, in the safety of your home, make sure they're connecting as well as they can. And finally, physically, definitely for special children, even if it means that you set a routine that every hour and a half or so, we kind of say, take the child for, let's say, put a pedometer on your phone and let the child walk for about, 200 steps or 300 steps, because that's the best that we can do right now. But so these are the four things that I would say we absolutely need to look at.
Thank you. Thank you so much. These are some useful tips. I'm sure many parents will relate to them and they will follow it. Now, my next question is for Dr. Ravi Kumar. So, sir, throughout the session, we discussed about various issues. Like children have few options for physical activity today. So, do you think that will have an impact on their well being? And what can be done to minimize such impact, if any?
So I will start saying what are the good habits or good effects of having a good physical activity. On a positive note rather than saying a negative note, what will happen if you don't have a physical activity? Like I would say, a good physical activity increases the energy level. Sleep routine will be much better. A sound sleep will be there. And they have a very positive attitude. They have a good healthy eating habit, and self-confidence will increase. And finally, I would say, like, definitely weight is also a concern, which is also going to help. So these are the positive aspects of saying, and also there are studies which say that when you are reading or you are having academic improvement, I think physical activity helps in those areas also. A strong physical activity improves your academic performance also. Saying all these positives, yes, the lockdown come to the home, online classes, not having any space around, make them reduce physical activity. We need to accept the things which is going around. But how else to improve is the next question. As already addressed by Devi and Jayanti, yes, spending time and having some physical activity together at the home, doing a few walks instead, or jogging, or even exercise routine as part of the early morning day. Or I would say if you have a space down, I'm not always saying you should not go out at all. I don't believe that. I believe mask yourself properly, walk in the open space, jog, do cycling. If you are skipping, do it. I would educate and I do to my children also, just take them out to the open doors. And I only say don't go nearer to anybody. There are a lot of games. I would say even if you are two people and you want to play something like badminton, then I'm okay because you're having quite a good distance where you will not get it. And open space is rarely a way of getting this disease. So I think you should take them. Sitting inside the closed doors, if you're not having a natural light, not going to help. So these are all positive ways we can make, and I think physical activity should be somehow inculcated, and it should be a way of life. We should not take this as curtailed as physical activity is abuse. It should not be an excuse to this. That's what my opinion.
Thank you, Doctor. Sir, next question is for Professor Andrew, sir. So we discussed about the challenges faced by children in the lower economic classes. Now, what can we do as a community to help them out, the parents or the children themselves?
Okay. First thing, as persons themselves who are in the lower economic community can help each other by trying to when they are sick or when they are, for example, going for market. Okay, instead of everyone going to the market, they can club together and they can say, okay, today I will buy it for you. Tomorrow you can buy it for me, so that you don't need everyone need to go to the market. So all these things can be tried. And similarly, okay, for learning, they can help the students. The children can come out because it's only a close-knit community. You can't isolate them. 2 or 3 students from the neighborhood families can sit together and can learn. And as the community which is possible to help others, what I can say is, when you have mates at home, treat them properly and give them salaries. And even if you're going to stop them for the month because you don't want a third person coming into the house, make sure that you pay them even when you are not engaging them in your homework, and help their children. For example, when Jayanti ma'am was telling that they can also interact with their friends, or Devi Mani ma'am also saying about, they can interact with their friends by Zoom. Maybe they can also have a Zoom call with their mates as children. Okay, so that that can help. Okay, and similarly, one more thing which I want to add is, though last I did not answer me, the PSBB issue everyone should be knowing now. So I think help your children to speak out. So that is very, very important. I think that's what we are seeing right now. The students were able to, across the social media, there are hundreds of posts on the abuses that happened in the school. But I've been working with the police for the last 4 days on this issue. There's not enough cases that came as complaint, because the parents were becoming the firewall. They're not allowing the children to speak out. They allowed them to speak in the social media without as anonymous. But when it comes to filing a complaint, the parents are putting up firewalls. So if you're not doing justice, if the child that has faced problems, faced abuses, if the accused is not punished, the scar the child carries will remain there for the life. Unless the accused is punished and you tell the child, I'm with you, it is not your mistake, the scar is going to remain. So I think that every parent has to tell their children, okay, that they can speak out. When there is injustice, they can speak out. If we are not going to teach this to our children, then the entire personality that we are training our children is going to be of a different kind.
I agree.
Thank you, Lasya.
Sir, before that, I would ask you to do once, like, can you, since Kavita understands Tamil, can you tell her a line or two in Tamil as to what she should do?
Okay, yes.
She's
கவிதாக்கா ரொம்ப நல்லா பேசுனீங்க. நல்லா சொன்னீங்க. உங்களுடைய, அதாவது குறிப்பா வந்து உங்க பையன் என்ன மாதிரியான ப்ராப்ளம்ஸ் ஃபேஸ் பண்ணிட்டு இருக்கான், அது குறிப்பா வந்து உங்களுக்கு ஹெல்ப் பண்ணணும்னு ஆசைப்படுறான் அப்படின்றது. ரைட், நீங்க என்ன செய்யலாம் அப்படின்றப்ப நீங்களும் செய்யலாம், உங்க பக்கத்தில் இருக்கிறவங்களோட செய்யலாம். இன்னைக்கு வந்து எல்லாரும் நமக்கு வந்து 1 மாசத்துக்கு 1 வாரத்துக்கு நம்ம ப்ரொவிஷனை வாங்கி வச்சுக்கிட்டு, காய்கறியை வாங்கி வச்சுக்கிட்டு இருக்கக்கூடிய வசதி நமக்கு இல்லை. தினமும் ஏதோ கிடைக்கிற பணத்தை வச்சு நம்ம தினமும் காய்கறி கடைக்கு போக வேண்டிய தேவை இருக்கு அப்படின்னு புரியுது, நமக்கு எல்லாரும் புரிஞ்சுக்க முடியுது. அப்ப நம்ம என்ன செய்யறோம்னாக்கா, எல்லாரும் ஒரே இடத்துல மார்க்கெட் போயிடாம பக்கத்து வீட்டுக்கு ஒரு நாள் நீ வாங்கிட்டு வாங்க, ஒரு நாளைக்கு உங்களுக்கு பக்கத்து வீட்டுக்காரங்க வாங்கிட்டு வரட்டும். அப்ப எல்லாரும் மார்க்கெட் ஒரே நேரத்துல மார்க்கெட்ல போய் குமிய வேண்டிய அவசியம் இருக்காது, கும்பலா போக வேண்டிய அவசியம் இருக்காது. ஸோ அப்ப கண்டிப்பா அது மாதிரி ஹெல்ப் பண்ணுங்க. உங்க பையனை பக்கத்து வீட்டு பையனோட பொண்ணோட பேசுறதுக்கு அலோவ் பண்ணுங்க. ஒன்னா உட்காந்து படிக்கிறது, வேற வேற கிளாஸ் இருந்தாலும் கூட பரவாயில்ல. ஏன்னா பசங்களுக்கு வந்து ஒன்னா உட்காந்து படிக்கிறது வந்து என்ன ஸ்கூல்ல அப்படிதான் பழகிருக்காங்க, ஒன்னா உட்காந்து படிக்கிறது. ஸோ அப்போ ஒன்னா உட்காந்து படிக்கிறதுக்கு சும்மா பேசிட்டு இருக்கட்டும், பரவாயில்ல. கூட 4 வார்த்தை படிச்சுட்டு 8 வார்த்தை மற்றதெல்லாம் பேசிட்டும் பரவாயில்ல, ஆனா பேசுறதுக்கு அலோ பண்ணுங்க. நம்ம சொல்லக்கூடிய இந்த சமூக இடைவெளி, தனிநபர் இடைவெளி அப்படின்றது ரொம்ப முக்கியமானதுன்னா கூட தனிநபர் இடைவெளியோட அவங்க ஒண்ணா உட்காந்து ஒரே இடத்துல உட்காந்து படிக்கலாம், பேசலாம். அதை என்கரேஜ் பண்ணுங்க பிள்ளைங்களுக்கு. இவங்க 2 பேர் சேர்ந்து, உங்க பையனும் உங்க பக்கத்து வீட்டு பையனும் உங்க பக்கத்து வீட்டு பொண்ணும் சேர்ந்து யாராவது கஷ்டப்படுறவங்களுக்கு, அந்த தெருவில் இருக்கக்கூடியவங்களுக்கு ஏதாவது ஹெல்ப் பண்ண முடியுமான்னு பாருங்க. அப்ப அந்த நல்ல ஆளுமையை, நல்ல ஒரு பர்சனாலிட்டியை குழந்தைங்களுக்கு நம்ம தொடர்ந்து இந்த மாதிரி லாக்டவுன் டைம்ல, ஏன்னா அவங்க நிறைய பிரச்சனையை சந்திச்சுட்டு இருக்காங்க, வெளியே போக முடியல, ஒரு மாதிரி ஒரு ஒரு இறுகின சூழல்ல இருக்கிறாங்க. அப்படின்றப்ப இதை அவங்களுக்கு கொஞ்சம் ஓப்பன் அப் பண்ண, தங்களுடைய வெளியே வரத்துக்கு ஹெல்ப் பண்ணும். அவங்களுக்கும் நல்ல ஒரு ஆளுமையை கட்டி எழுப்ப உதவி செய்யும். நன்றி.
தேங்க்யூ சார், தேங்க்யூ ஸோ மச். கவிதா அக்கா, உங்க பையனுக்கு வந்து சிப்ளிங்ஸ் இல்லை, அக்கா தங்கச்சி யாரும் இல்லைனால கண்டிப்பா இது பண்ணணும். லைக் பக்கத்து வீட்டு அவங்களோட பசங்களோட விளையாடுறது இல்லை பேசுறது ரொம்ப இம்பார்ட்டன்ட். ஸோ ஐ நோ நீங்க கேட்டுட்டு இருக்கீங்கன்னு தெரியும். நீங்க அது கண்டிப்பா உங்க பையனுக்கு அலோ பண்ணுங்க. I have another important question. Thank you, Andrew sir. Thank you for your inputs. This is really helpful. I hope this helps her out. Anyways, I will also talk to her after the call to ensure that she got your message. So this is an
you can also give my number to her also, so that
yes,
she can
I
also
do that.
talk to me if she wants.
I will be sharing the contacts of all the panelists to everyone. So I will do that, sir. After the call, we'll do that after the session. So this is another important question from Binita, reporter from New Indian Express. She says that it was discussed how special needs children were affected the most due to the lockdown. She wants to know from any of the experts, what are the major causes of concern right now for children with special needs? How different and difficult is the second lockdown from the first one for these kids? So anyone can answer it among the panelists?
So Lasha, I can take that on. I don't have as much stats as I would like for special needs children as opposed to neurotypical children, because it's still a minority with us. But like I said, a couple of areas that we are seeing difficulty is that, in the first lockdown, I think for a while at least, that whole lockdown thing, for definitely a few weeks, is a bit of a novelty. It was like this sudden holiday thing that had come in, and everybody was, kind of joking about it, till it became that, okay, it's becoming really long and it's too much for us, right? So the way I see it from the children that we've had with us, one of the things we saw dropped the first time and very sharply the second time is the child's ability to be independent. Very often, everybody who's in the tribe of helping a child with special needs is focusing around saying, how do we make the child independent and able to do whatever they have to do in their area of progress independently. That's actually regressed a lot. We're seeing that children are, and perhaps this is something that as a family also, we all kind of say, well, these are terrible times. I'm going to start taking this back into my own hands. We're actually, taking that away, very much like what Jayanti said, right? The onus falls on us sometimes because the children pass it on, and perhaps here as well, the children pass it on, but definitely we have started as parents taking some of that onus back and making the child lesser dependent. And that's led to a whole bunch of things, including the fact that the parents who are not used to taking on this extra role, especially when they're working parents, kind of feel very, very stressed. We're seeing it come out in different ways where mothers with children with special needs are actually, and I'm saying mothers very strongly because they are the ones who are choosing or debating if to give up work. These are all working women with their own ambitions and their own need for that external world and stimulus, and as well as, the validation that they get from their jobs is so important. But to say, I'm going to take a step back because my child is struggling and I'm going to, do it at the cost of my own needs and ambitions will just have a cascading effect later. So that's definitely something we've seen. The second thing, like I said, is definitely in the building of competencies. That's the other thing that we always work with children with special needs, where you build specific and wider competencies. That has gone out in a way that, we haven't imagined. However, I can tell you that while in the first lockdown, people were struggling to say, okay, now what do I do? Because, if there's a child on a spectrum, if you don't keep repeating it, the child loses, what is being taught, right? They don't do it anymore. Very strongly routine-based teaching is needed for children with special needs. So that kind of went out of the window. And the first lockdown, people struggled. But I'm seeing in the second lockdown, people are coming back. They are able to continue to some extent what was being started. We've always been an online company. We started way before the pandemic, and we refused to be a live counseling company purely because kids do not, I don't think children want to travel and see us anymore. They're very happy doing Zoom calls and text, and our best conversations happen actually over text, where they don't feel the need to look at my face and say I'm panicking right now. So that's really what happens. But we're seeing that, at least for building competencies, we're seeing that children with special needs are able to get better classes during the second lockdown as opposed to the first one. I think the area that's really affected them is the connectedness. We've seen that they've become a lot more clingy at home because they just have those parents and grandparents and just them in the house. So they become very clingy with the people who are there. I find that some of our kids who are on the spectrum start getting very anxious and start acting out when the mother as much as goes out to do a small chore and come back. So that's definitely affected them, and it's become worse during the second lockdown, to be honest. And this has actually led to far more mood swings and perhaps leaning towards a lot more emotional disturbances in the child, because they hardly had the time to go through the first lockdown, recover from it, and go back to what could be a newer set of routines. Was not there. They came out, they were beginning to come out, and then they all went back right in, right? So that's been really difficult. So that's what we've seen.
Thank you, ma'am. Binita, I hope that answered your question. If not, you can connect with Devi ma'am if she's okay with it later after the session. Yes? Okay. So we have a few more questions from our readers, but before that, I would want to, we spoke about the art of communication, how communication actually solved issues among, and it actually increases the bonding between parents and children. But here comes a difficult question, should I say rather sensitive question, like children today are seeing the parents of family members seriously ill. Some may even be coping with loss of very near and dear ones. How does one talk to children of different ages about grief, illness, and death, or even help them cope with it? Aarti, do you want to talk about it?
I know it's a different take I have, but death is the only thing that's guaranteed when we're born, right? Everything else is incidental in between. However, as parents, we've always avoided talking about death and dying. We put them in the existential realm or the philosophical realm or the spiritual realm, and we don't want to talk about the only thing that is actually guaranteed to a human being who's born. Having said this, I'd like to go through different age groups. When they're in the preschool age, below 5, death is not yet something that is formed as a concept for them. So at that time, it's still something temporary, something that's reversible. That's why if you see the cartoons that are made for them, the cat will die and it'll come back, and all of that, because it caters to that fantasy that is already built so beautifully in the child's mind. But having said this, I don't mean that they won't miss a person that they've lost or someone who's moved on. It's just that for them, the concept of death is not yet something that makes them feel that the person won't come back and things like that. Between the ages of say 5 and 9, usually what happens is they understand dying, but they're still very distant. It's not yet a personal experience. Okay, because they understand living things, non-living things, because I'm sure their social studies books tell them that 500 million times and all of that, and that living things will die and all those things. So they probably also have a pet that's died or moved on, a plant that's died. So they have some kind of a concept, but they're still looking at it more scientifically. In that sense, between the ages of 9 and right through adolescence is when they really understand death and what it is to grieve and things like that. By this, I don't mean that younger children don't grieve. The way they would experience grief is completely different. And since I've been working purely with grief for the last several months now, I can tell you that it's sort of shifting in that sense. Having said this, what is it that I can do as a parent or as an adult? How do I help them understand the pandemic? Number one, stay informed but not addicted to the news. Okay, because our media channels have, and I'm sorry, with due respect to all the journalists on this panel, I know that a lot has been written that is quite triggering for people who may not be able to regulate emotions. So in that sense, I would ask parents to, cut out information that is not relevant. And most important, with the current kind of reporting that's going around, please teach your children how to discern facts from misinformation and disinformation, and to understand that polarization is something that is very real, and children are are becoming the biggest victims of polarization. I need to make a point here, because if we don't do this now, the kind of emotional fallout that our children will have will be much higher. Okay, because people, because they're not able to regulate their own emotions, they're shaming somebody, taking political standpoints, etc., etc. If you actually let go of all that and say, listen, I'm actually feeling a little unsure, I'm a little worried that somebody will fall ill, we'll acknowledge that. Because they don't want to do that, they're doing what is called cognitive empathy. So I know what you're supposed to be feeling, I know you're supposed to be feeling anxious, but I don't want to go there, so I'll shame you online and say it's because the vaccine was not ordered, it was because this happened, it's because that happened. People are staying very cerebral when they can actually be a little vulnerable and understand that something can be done here. The second group of people are the ones that become emotionally empathetic, the ones that get sucked into the whole drama and don't know if this is their pain, somebody else's pain, the media, whatever it is. This is also something that children need to be protected from. Cognitive empathy and emotional empathy actually affect children very, very deeply. What really helps is compassionate empathy. And when I say compassionate empathy, it's the one where you are willing to sit with somebody's pain. You're willing to understand that you can make a meaningful contribution, but you're willing to treat the other person as an equal and say, how can I sit with you? How can I work with you? Okay. And the thing is, please don't say these things like they're in a better place to a child, because we don't know where they are, number one. Okay. And so when you say they're in a better place, a young child is going to say, oh, then I was probably responsible for them not having a good place here in the first place. Children tend to take these things very personally. So please don't say they're with God, they're in some better place and all that. Just let them know. But you know where they are? They're in your memories right now. What do you remember about them? So get children to connect back with experiences that are beautiful. Okay, and there may be ways in which they would like to talk about it, draw about it, facilitate some kind of expression. And I remember there was this child whose father was killed in an accident, and for almost 6 months, the only kind of fantasy play that he would have is the ambulance coming in and taking his father's body away. Because this child was the one sitting on the father's lap when he was killed. And the only memory he could actually process was repeatedly medics coming and trying to rescue his father. And after that 6 months, that entire period, the child was able to understand that the father is no longer with him physically. And then he was able to accept that the father is in the photograph. Okay, now he's much older, he's about 10 years old, and then he's able to talk about it. So grief is not something that, you suddenly say 6 months, and then after that you'll go through it. All through life, you will process grief. Grief is one of the most beautiful experiences of being human. So it's not something that you will fix. It is something that you will sit through. You will help the child talk about, express it in the most safe environment possible. So please don't rush to let children know, okay, don't cry, it'll be all right. And the child is crying for somebody, you say, but don't worry, I'm there. They're not crying for you. So don't go and take that space. Let the child experience and express what they are. Because in India, we have to be positive people. Please don't become toxic positive models for your children. That's the worst thing you can do. So in terms of what we can do, stick to facts. So if you don't know, say you don't know. That's the most important thing that we can model as adults. So will you die? Okay. Don't say maybe not like that. You just say, see, but I'm healthy right now. And if I mask, like beautifully Dr. Ravikumar mentioned, I'm not going to go into crowded places. I'm going to wear a mask. I'm going to maintain, basic hygiene rules. I stick to what I can do and what I need to do. And these rules have not changed at any point. Okay, so if I keep sticking to facts and letting children know, but if there is, then I have to identify it early and then we take treatment. And there are treatment methods that are available. And so they'll say if there are no hospital beds, right? So all this confusion comes in because we're feeding so much of information. So we can say, if that happens, these are the methods. So there are websites online and we can register and people are able to get beds on time, things like that. So be very clear that there are processes and systems in place. And when we follow the process and systems, it does work. Okay, because when you stick to that, the child's brain also understands, oh, there are things that I can do. And in all situations in life, there will be things you can control and things you can't. focus always so beautifully on the things you can control when you're speaking to a child. Okay, and there are questions that you don't know how to answer. You say, when it comes, I think we can go through it together. Let them know that you're not going to abandon them, or no, people aren't going to abandon them. When they know that they're going to be able to do this together, that will give them the courage. So I hope that answers the question.
Very much. Thank you so much, Aarti. Like, I think fear, it applies for both children and adults. We get scared only when we are not informed, right, properly. So when we are informed of the right things, I think we can sail through that. Thank you so much for that. And we are towards the end of the discussion. I think we have dealt with.
Lasya, can I interrupt? Just
Yes,
want to add what Aarti ma'am was telling.
definitely, sir. Please.
Okay. So on one side, yes, of course. But one more thing in happening in many of the families is like loss of parents. Okay, that is we are according to a recent discussion with one of the officers in the government, there are 60 children who have lost both their parents. Okay, and this is only reported to the government. So there are many that can happen like this. Okay, where the children losing, especially when it comes to lower economic class, where the breadwinner is lost. At least the Kerala government has announced that they will be setting aside 3 lakhs for them, and 2,000 rupees until they become 18 years for the entire, and the education expenses taken care. So something like this, I think we need to keep speaking to the government, because losing a breadwinner, especially in a lower economic class, what will happen is these children will become child laborer or get trafficked, become bonded laborers. Okay, child marriage, all these issues that can stop a child becoming complete can happen. So I think it's very important that as a community we understand that there are mechanisms around us that can help child to recoup, to come out of this problem. Like the simple thing everyone can do is try to be aware of the child line 1098. Okay, whenever you see a child, whenever you see children who are in distress, okay, it can be any type of distress, that so immediately we can take the help of child line. And every district has a child welfare committee, every district has a child protection officer, every district has a child marriage prohibition officer. Okay, and child welfare committees. Now in Chennai we have 3 child welfare committees, because we have a lot of caseloads. So because of that, there are a lot of child protection mechanisms are available. Only thing is, when we come across, make sure that we just don't feel sorry for them, but we lend out a hand. And help is very simple. We can just call 1098 and we can help a child to become normal again. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Lasya, I'd just add, because Andrew beautifully brought up a point there. Just after the tsunami and several other natural disasters, we noticed that a lot of pedophiles came in to adopt children who were orphaned, and that is not allowed. So they will pose as adoptive parents, they will pose as NGOs, they will pose as anything. And this is where I'd like to mention that the only way to do this is to register, one, get in touch with 1098, like Andrew said, but most importantly, adoption in India can be done only through the CARA website.
Yes.
All other forms of adoption are illegal, though hospitals indulge in it, though there are people who do it, in very illegal ways. The only way to do it is through the CARA website. So please, if you find somebody on social media mentioning that, there is a child who's lost both parents and you have to adopt and all that, please guide them to the CARA website, and please also report that number to the 1098 so that immediate action is taken, because we know that predators and pedophiles will always find such children who are vulnerable, and since they come from backgrounds where no one will fight for them, they become such easy targets for these people. So I hope that I've added to Andrew's point there.
Yes, that is something I think we should all do as responsible citizens. Report when we see something like this. We have been recently off late on the social media. I think we have all been noticing these messages that there are children that you can just adopt by calling this number. That's not right. So thank you, Aarti, for throwing light on that. So now we take questions from the readers, since it's already 5:30. So let's just take some questions. Dr. Ravikumar, I think you want to answer this question. This question is from Harshita Nair. How do you deal with temper tantrums in younger children around the age of 10? To the point that they start blaming you for what they are going through, and you become the enemy that is torturing them. Rudeness, aggression in neurotypical children.
I think temper tantrum is a word. I think at 10 years using it is difficult. I think RP is the right person to say that. And
நான் ஒரு நாளைக்கு half an hour தான் கேம் சொல்லி ஆயிடுச்சு அந்த ஊர்ல இருந்து நீ ஃபுல் டே விளையாடுறது நான் என்னைக்குமே அதை பண்ணவே இல்லை.
there's a cross track. I'm sorry, I just got to wait until it's done. So as I said, temper tantrum is not the appropriate word when you use it for this age of 10. And this is actually the typical psychological and physical and the emotional changes that happen in a species. I would say this is, both are different. Temper tantrum is more precise for a preschool children. And there is, I would simply say, deviate distraction and try to make them focus something else. That's the easy way. And then temper tantrum areas, sometimes if you too much respond to it, they know they are responding. That's the key at that age. They know that it's a way of getting your attention. I would say, just make them focus, change your thing. I think RC will be the right person. I'm again saying, because psychology is very challenging. As a doctor, I would say people think that a pediatrician can answer all this easily. No, it's not so easy. And next, about this age group, definitely yes. Making them understand is very difficult, but you need to go in line with them, trying to talk with them. Why do they feel that way? What makes them feel that they are not being looked at? What makes them feel? Allow them to speak. As JJ already said, allow your team to talk to you more. Come out with what they feel. Many a times, there's a good book also says that if you want your child to listen to you, better you first listen to them. That is the way, because only when you allow them to talk, you'll be able to understand clearly what their thought process, and then try to slowly put in one by at a time. Don't be philosophical, be practical as again, and make simple words, few steps at a time. I think we can move forward that way. And fear may help. I think when you are going to an adolescent, fear have a more influence, and we need to take a step, sit back and help the fears be properly.
Thank you, doctor. There are also a few questions about how to help children from the lower economic classes. But Professor Andrew has already explained that, and the video, the whole session will be uploaded on YouTube. Readers can, listen to that for more information. But before we close the session now, there's one last question I want to ask. Anyone can take it from the panel. We have already discussed a few tips as to how to reduce the screen time of children. But are there any more tips anyone wants to, are there any resources as to what can we do? What can we do to our children to utilize the time productively?
I'm going to take this, Lasya, because it's a very important question. Number one, when you want to change a behavior, there has to be a relationship in place. Okay, especially when you're talking about addiction, addiction to a screen, addiction to a substance. Unless there is a relationship, the addiction doesn't change. You can give the best of medication, you can give the best of treatment, as we call it, but it will not change. So there are very simple rules. Now, if you buy a mixie, if you buy any gadget to use at home, it comes with a manual. Unfortunately, this thing that we use doesn't come with a manual. So nobody knows exactly how much time is good. In fact, we even heard like an audio clipping in between where a mother was telling her, "Na 10 nimisham da sonne," right? And I'm sure it's happening in everybody's house. I'm sorry we eavesdropped on that conversation, but jokes apart, what I'm trying to say is it's probably a conversation in everybody's house. So if you really want to make a difference, number one, the sleep habits have to be regular. I know I go back to sleep always, but unless we set the physiological, biological clock, as we call it, in place, trying to change any habits overnight are not going to change, number one. So make sure that your eating habits, your toilet habits, eating, exercise, these are very important, especially if it's a teenager, considering that there are also a lot of hormonal and neurological changes that are happening. Boys will require about 350 to 400 minutes a week as physical activity. That's the minimum requirement. And girls will require between 250 and 300 minutes a week as physical activity. And unless this happens, being able to regulate a lot of the neurological changes and the hormonal changes will become very difficult. So you're going to find them being very lethargic because they're going to get a lot of dopamine from the gadget and then not have any way in which they're regulating the other chemicals. So that will be the first thing. The second thing is model, don't manipulate. So if you are sitting there all the time on social media, distracting yourself, doing all sorts of nonsense, etc. And I'm sure all of you know that I spend 30 seconds in the morning on Facebook, and I work again 30 seconds in the evening. And so if you send me a message on Facebook, you won't get a reply because I don't go on Facebook more than 1 minute a day. Okay, but I have some several thousand followers. That's it. The point is I don't engage with them. I just put out content which they can consume if they want. If they don't want it, they don't see it. That's about it, right? So you need to set what are your rules when you go onto social media, right? If you're going to use it to watch cat videos, dog videos, your child is also going to use it for similar things. So you need to make sure that you're modeling. Third, please set a connection ritual. Now, when I say connection ritual, this is going to work even for the tantrum question that came up. Number one, build the relationship. You can't be there all the time controlling like Hitler, trying to tell children how to do. In those days, we were like this. Somalia children don't have food. See, in the pandemic, there are children. You are not going to use those examples. The real relationship is the one that you're building in your own home, and it'll take time. And it takes a lot of love to build a relationship. You can't just go there and keep correcting things. You'll need to build a connection. And when I say connection ritual, any relationship value, you need to spend at least 15 minutes. You need to make at least that much time doing something both of you enjoy. And that must be a safe space where the child can also communicate back with you without being criticized, without moralizing, lecturing, advising, any of those things. When you build that connection ritual for at least 21 to 30 days, after that you broach the topics that you want that are slightly going to push you towards a conflict. Without doing that, today after the josh of this session, people go and say, from today, no gadget. The child will say, I know you watch some 4 useless people speaking on Zoom, and then you want to come and tell me not to use something. It's not going to change like that. Okay, so you build the connection and let them know, these are things that I would like you to change. And I've also put out a video on how you communicate with a teenager. Basic rule, give them 24 hours, let them prepare their side of the discussion and have a discussion with them. Let them speak first. If they tell you something valuable, note it down, bring about a change. Because when you model change, they also understand that if a relationship has to work long term, both sides have to change. Bring about that change. Then negotiating how gadgets can be used works. Without a relationship, changing any kind of addiction, especially gadget addiction, which thrives on dopamine, is not possible. So bring in oxytocin, then dopamine is something that you can balance.
That's a fine way of putting it, Aarti. Thank you so much. The session was intense and fun. So any more questions and doubts, you can always reach to, with the permission of the panelists, we will share the contacts, or it's available there. No, Aarti, not for you. The other panelists, like I'm going to share Kavita's number with Andrew sir, that wise. So thank you so much for this. We will be sending the YouTube video of the discussion along with the report soon. Have a good weekend. Bye.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity and the platform to share our concerns. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, big efforts, Lasha. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Wonderful panel. Thank you, Lashya.
Thank you so much.
Thank you all.
Thank you, doctor.